Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning for our webinar in collaboration with our partner, Checkpoint, where our agenda is focused around cyber resilience. So I'm joined by my colleagues from Checkpoint, who, when I hand over, will obviously introduce themselves. I think it would be nice just to know where everyone is joining me from. You could actually just post into the chats where you are connecting from, and we'll appreciate to know where you're connecting from. So I'm Mohammed Jabi, representing DataGroupIT, and I'm a regional manager, Sadiq. So I work hand in hand with a very bigger team where we offer a wide range of cybersecurity services and solutions through our channels to our respective customers. So when we talk about cybersecurity, the reality is out there. We get to hear and see a lot of attacks that are happening across the different sectors across Africa. So cyber resiliency is not just an isolated issue that is just left to the IT team or a particular set of people that handle security. It goes all the way up to the executives. So cybersecurity issues should always be taken as a priority and a strategic issue for an entire organization. I'll let you look at that slide there for a few seconds. And this is a reality check. These are some global statistics in terms of cyber threats and cybersecurity related issues globally. And an interesting one for me out there is if we look at the bottom right there, 88% of cybersecurity breaches are caused by human error, which is obviously a very growing concern. And a lot of organizations, close to 100%, have experienced phishing attacks. So cyber threats is not a light issue for any organization. Things like AI-powered phishing attacks, things like your ransomware, which every executive or CISO has a concern about ransomware. And also we see an increase in business email compromise. So bottom line is cybersecurity is a very big concern. It has to be taken seriously by every organization across Africa. Let's look at this Interpol report from last year. We've seen globally attacks are happening, but Africa is now a focus for threat actors. If we look at the slides we've got here, on my left, I've got one that represents suspected scam notifications. And surprisingly, Zambia, where I'm based, is ranking amongst the top 20 in Africa. And then if we look at the right-hand side, where we've got detected ransomware, you'll see that Egypt is topping, followed by the likes of South Africa, Nigeria, Kenya. So what does this mean? Obviously, this is a wake-up call for every organization in Africa. The fact that we are undergoing a lot of digital transformation, Africa is in the digital space right now, which obviously leaves us prone to compromise attacks. And in this webinar, once I hand over to our team from Checkpoint, obviously they'll highlight further because quite all right, yes, we do protect our organizations, be it our data, be it our applications, be it our users. But it's also important as organizations and businesses, how are you viewed or perceived out there? Are there any vulnerabilities? Are there any potential attacks that you could be faced with? And how do you withstand those attacks and how do you recover from that? So my last slide before I hand over to Riaz, just a bit about who we are as DataGroupIT. We are a security-focused value-added distributor. And we do have a vision, obviously, on the African continent to be one of the trusted, agile, value-added cybersecurity specialists, distributor, and consultants. So we are spread out through the African continent, doing nothing but trying to combat security challenges. And we've been growing tremendously across the continent. So we are well versed and we have a very good understanding in terms of the challenges organizations face in Africa. We've got a very proactive team of capable sales leaders. We've got a big technical team. We've got an awareness strategy through our marketing team. So we're very active on the African continent. We've got presence in a number of countries where we've got offices. If not, we've also got remote resources and strategic partners that we do work with. So I'll end here and then hand over to Riaz. Otherwise, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope you find this session very insightful. Over to you, Riaz.
Thank you, Mohammed. Thank you for that, I think, very brief introduction, but a very, very important introduction in that as well. Dear all, good morning to you. My name is Riaz Hamid, and I'm the Territory Account Manager for, I think, most of the representation of people from the different countries that have connected here this morning. If somebody can just tell me if I'm clear and audible, Mohammed.
Yes, you are, Riaz.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, so normally I tend to talk to myself when my mic goes off, so it's always good not to make yourself the laughing stock. But nonetheless, I think, if I had to take what you've said, Mohammed, and encapsulate it into a couple of points, some serious points for discussion. I think it actually brings us over through to actually understanding what the value of cybersecurity within the domains where we find ourselves, right? And it's actually it's gotten so important in the last, let's just say, 5 to 6 years, that we look at cybersecurity as a whole, and that we embrace it in its true sense across its value chain. And the only way that we can do that is if we actually change and really understand what we need to start providing as customers over through to our internal stakeholders and our external stakeholders, and as well as maybe if there's some partners here, what we should be providing our customers with. And I think it's very, very important that we understand how cybersecurity can actually play a better part if it was actually considered as a strategic business decision. Now, as I said, I am from Check Point, and I look after various countries around the SADC region. But I've also had, the overwhelming opportunity to work in East and West Africa as well. So I've spent some time there looking at FSIs. I've also spent some time looking at other companies. Strategic accounts is what we call them, right, in the space of where we work with. So I kind of have a very, very good view of what happens in Africa, and I can definitely tell you that we are, as a continent, we are more open to threats and vulnerabilities than any other places in the world. However, we do have portions of certain countries within the SADC region that's actually embraced cybersecurity very well, and we are actually quite evolved. And I think this morning, I just want to take my discourse around probably a couple, just about 3 points, right? Let's look at what the strategic importance of cybersecurity can bring to us. Let's understand how to go about balancing cost-benefit analysis, and then obviously let's try to build something, like a very, very high-level cybersecurity strategy. Now, if you look at breaches, breaches in themselves, they intrinsically cost us a lot of money. I think, I had the unfortunate instance of actually dealing with 2 breaches in one of our SADC countries 2 Decembers ago, and it caused a lot of disruption. Not only just disruption from a connectivity point of view and services, but it also caused disruption, long-term disruption, and also incurred lots of different financial costs and legal and compliance issues for this specific customer within this country. And I think one of the most important things is that, sometimes we can kind of bridge the gap. We can close it up very, very quickly and understand how we can get back to trading and get back with a lot of other things as, day one, as you want to call it. But I think, when breaches happen, they cause some type of reputational damage. And I think, every business in themselves has an internal stakeholder and has an external stakeholder. And I think our brand damages, are something that it's sometimes we don't really recover from this, right? And especially if you're in a highly regulated environment, when these breaches happen, especially in FSI, it's a very, very brutal environment. You have lots of legal and compliance costs that come with that, and in most cases, it just impedes, and it causes a lot of loss in revenue. But I think, from a strategic alignment, businesses really need to start thinking about how they take their business goals and how they match it over through to the appetite for risk in as far as your strategy is concerned. And I think what's also very, very important is that, let me just get there. um, you know, when we look at businesses and we try to understand, how we take them from one place to another, it's very, very important that we are very, very transparent, with each other. We are very, very transparent, and we really understand what we're getting into. Now, in most cases, when you look at companies that have been breached, and you have all of these type of different costs and everything else that's implicated, and when you start looking deeper into what has actually happened within the environment in the last maybe 6 to 12 months, you would see that, there's always a situation of customers not being very, very proactive, and in most cases, if they are proactive in certain areas, I think it's the value chain that sometimes gets overlooked. And I think, the cost of cybersecurity, putting these strategies in place together with products and services, it's very, very costly. The initial investment for cybersecurity is absolutely high. I mean, think about the fact that if you need to start putting in edge security, firewalls, you need to start coupling that with the services that go to implement that, and then there's the ongoing costs, right? And you need to maintain these things over a period of time, in as far as you keep these things in within your environment. And one of the things that I find when I start looking at customers and start analyzing, we start looking at how well developed, how well trained are the internal and the external stakeholders, and the training cost in itself just to maintain these type of programs, these cybersecurity programs within businesses, is actually becoming very, very, very complicated and costly, right? And the cost of breaches, once you breached in an environment, you essentially have two types of costs. It's an indirect cost and there's a direct cost. The direct cost is everything to do with the loss of your revenue, and the indirect cost sometimes comes in at a stage where you probably, if you are ransomized, you probably need to pay people and try to retract and get your data. So I think, for businesses that are trying to invest, I think it's very, very important that you really, really understand your appetite for your investment, and you try to invest sort of equally within the entire value chain of your cybersecurity strategy, right? And the cost benefit analysis needs to make sense, right? And one of the things that I come across with customers and people that are investing is, Riaz, how much is it going to cost me? We really need to start looking carefully at our cost benefit analysis and try to put some kind of justification that makes sense to try to keep you, one, secured, internal and external cost, stakeholders, and also from a from a group perspective where you're looking at total security. Now, there's never a secret remedy when it comes to investment in costs. And when I look at businesses, and when I start looking at, let's understand, how what your plan is over the next 12 to 18 months, and I find that businesses that invest a lot upfront, they have a very, very low risk portfolio, and businesses that don't invest as much. They got a very, very high risk portfolio, right? Now, this can come down to various different types of things. It can come down to a board strategy. It can come down to budgeting. It can come to various different things. But I think the point that we need to see is that, and I'm stressing this, is that we look at cybersecurity as a strategy across your entire value chain, and you try to build different parts of your value chain. Those that have invested heavily, you can see from the slide, their risk appetite, I mean, their risks are quite low. They can manage their environments. Those that didn't, and obviously they pay a very, very different price, right? So always just also make sure that when you're building your strategy, when you're looking at across your entire value chain, that you make sure your cost versus your risks needs to be very, well balanced. Building a cybersecurity strategy, it's not difficult. I think with the way we've moved with cybersecurity over in the last, let's just say, 5 to 7 years, a lot of people have basically started putting a lot of the building blocks in place. But I think it all starts with risk assessment, right? When you start looking at the risk assessment, you need to really understand, how averse you are to risk. You need to start investing, and you need to really start understanding what are the most important things that you need to protect, right, within your environment. You need to obviously, identify your assets, look at the vulnerabilities that's aligned and associated with that, and then you need to also start looking at the broader scope of maybe your industry, and you start evaluating the threats, right? And that's how you start to understand your risk. But also at the same time, with building this, there's two very, very important things that are interlinked. Understanding your security policies and developing that right at the onset, and keeping that in tune, and keeping that regulated, and making sure that it's updated, and making sure that it's enforced, is very, very important for any business, to make sure that the protocols talk to each other. And one of the things, guys, that's very, very important, I think, after you've put and you've understand and you've assessed your cybersecurity strategy, please make sure that you have an incident response plan put in place. And I can give you a very, very good example. When these two companies from the specific region were breached, the first thing that we did as Checkpoint was we got together what we call an IRT team, which is an incident response team. This team took the customer right down from grassroots level, from inception of where the breach started out, and then also built right to the end the communication plan around how they're going to actually approach the breach, and how they're going to get reinstated, how they're going to redefine the day one, and then with the recovery plan in place, and coupling that with a root cause analysis over for your stakeholders. It's very, very important that you understand and you make sure that these type of things are put in place. Now, these are the building blocks for what I would think is a resilient cybersecurity strategy. And if you follow this at a very, very high level, I'm not going to get in depth with all of them, but if you have these in your as your topical view, and I'm sure you would be able to have some kind of reasonable plan put in place. Now, implementing and managing a cybersecurity strategy, I think it's also, it's not difficult. And I think the most important thing is that your assessment and your strategy development must be in line. It must be something that makes sense. Always remember that it's got to make sense. And within that, make sure that you have your employee training plans put into place. Because, I always make the wonderful analogy of a person with a Ferrari, a supercar. I've got the supercar, but I don't have a license and I can't drive. What does it mean to the person that owns the keys? It means absolutely nothing. But take that same Ferrari and give it over through to a race car driver. Now he's as happy as anything, because why? He has the technical skills to drive that vehicle. Right. And employee training is exactly that. You can put in the best measures, you can put in the best practices, you can put in the best rules and policies, you can have the best, and I can sell you the greatest. But if your teams and your people are not trained, your internal and external stakeholders, I always refer to internal and external stakeholders, because within a business, you need to make sure that the competency is at its highest, and those people that you partner with, those who are using your external systems, make sure that they are trained and they understand. So this is very, very important. And I think, if you got your employee training in place, your stakeholder training in place, your monitoring and your improvement becomes very, very important because, due to continuous monitoring, you can actually have a look at where your vulnerabilities lie. And in that, you can evolve and actually build feed-up loops that can actually test these vulnerabilities or test certain areas or test your monitoring to make sure that what you put in place actually talks to what you want to do. In conclusion, I think assessing your cybersecurity strategy, developing it, and ongoing training, these are the key blocks. And it's very, very important that we make sure that we touch on all of these key blocks, and make sure that we at least understand how the investment is actually going to roll out within these key blocks. Like I said to you right at the very beginning, and Mohammed also said to you, Africa is a playground for breaches and threats. More so over because we don't have people that are well trained. So ongoing training is very, very important. Developing your strategy around your value chain. I always come back to value chain as well, because putting firewalls is just not enforcing your entire value chain. You need to look at your cloud security. You need to look at endpoint security. You need to look at IoT security if you are in that space. But if you're not, and if it doesn't make sense, then don't invest, right? But make sure that you assess your cybersecurity standard and does make sense. Now, this is one slide that I want to actually include, and this is a portfolio of who we are as Checkpoint as a whole. And when I talk to some of our customers who are using our products, and if I talk to prospects who don't know about Checkpoint, and when I talk to partners, it's very, very important that we always refresh, right? And we bring to the fore around what we're doing and what's different, and where we set differentiations with other competitors in that sense. What you're looking at right now is an infinity solution, and this is a solution that touches on a cybersecurity value chain of any institution, whether you reside in public, whether you reside in a private business, whether you're a parastatal. If you are in that business and you need to secure your environment, we have a product that talks to every part of security in that value chain. And one of the most important things that's really, really moved in the last 24 months is the advent of artificial intelligence and machine learning. I'd like to just actually bring this to the fore. We at Checkpoint right now are making certain that every part of our applications have embedded AIs, embedded machine learning that is actually going to automate a lot of the tasks that we need to actually complete on the perimeter, whether we are in SOC, whether we network engineers or whatever the case might be. The most important thing is that we are AI first driven company. All of our solutions are now beginning to be built on AI technology, and it's going to only evolve in the future. And I think if you guys have any questions around this, I'm sure the team will connect us, and then we can actually delve into certain part of the solutions if you are looking at a solution within your value chain, right? But if you're not, it's always great to know these slides will be available for you. And I think, if something does tickle your fancy and you want us to go through that, we can set up sessions where we can take you through, and we can also do proof of concepts for you, which is actually totally free and no charge to you. Okay. So with those few words, I'd like to say thank you to everyone for the opportunity to meet. Actually, I just messaged somebody in private now to say, wow, we have as many people, 114 people on this call represented by Africa. Well done, Diana. I really appreciate this. Mohammed, thank you very much for this. And thank you guys for your time. We really appreciate your time. Getting the time off in the day, we understand how it is. So once again, thank you very much. I'll leave you now to my colleague, Cordelia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Riaz. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to share my screen with you in a little while. Let me just do this. Okay, if I could just get a heads up or thumbs up if you can see my screen.
Yeah, we good. Cordelia, just a sec. There's a hand up by Mubanga.
Yes.
Okay. Mubanga, is there any question from your end? I think, guys, you can feel free to post questions in the chat as well.
Yeah, see, we do have a hand.
Yeah, we would definitely share the slides. Dee, are we able to unmute participants to ask questions?
I have just allowed him to unmic. He's able to.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, we
Mwanga.
can.
So good morning to everyone. Thank you for making this possible. That was an amazing presentation from Riaz. I hope I got your name correct. It's not really a question. I think from my point of view, I would really like to see sort of a demonstration of the extent at which checkpoints goes. What else checkpoint is able to do? I feel like our application of this technology is purely based on what we've seen or how far we think this technology can go. And so if you're able to demonstrate to me the capabilities of what else the checkpoint solution is able to do, that perhaps opens up a lot of possibilities for how I can apply this solution into my environment. Obviously, we have various problems that need to be addressed, but without knowing what we can use it, what else to be used for, it tends to be, underutilized, so to speak. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Mwanga. Riaz, do you want to take that question from Mwanga?
No, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Sabi, Mobanga. I think it's a common realization that people would want to optimize whatever they have in their environments. And absolutely, we can definitely take you through. As if you can just remember that infinity slide that I showed you, it's very interoperable with each other. And I think you really like the way the system has evolved. The platform is really talking to what customers want. It's given the single pane of view, and it's actually collaborating and consolidating a lot of the environments and cutting down costs for our users. So absolutely, we will definitely attend to this requirement of yours. I think what we will do is that we've got all of your details, and then we'll just reach out to you, and we'll set up some time to take you through. But absolutely, it can be done. Thank you.
Thanks, Riaz. Yeah, I think before Cordelia can take over, what I would just like to say is we can always have even one-on-one sessions with anyone on this call. If there's more that you want to understand, there's more that you want to see, please feel free to reach out. Obviously, we cannot address everything in this webinar where we've got limited time, but we're there to assist, and we'll obviously have follow-up sessions after this. So over to you, Cordelia.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Once again, good morning, everyone. My name is Cordelia Orwe. I'm a security engineer at Check Point, and today I'll be taking you over two of our solutions, and let's have a little bit of a look into what our agenda is looking like. Okay, so we're going to kick off with a dive straight into external risk management, looking into what exactly is external risk management, what are some of the challenges that we've seen and identified, a little bit of an introduction into CyberInt, then we'll look into the solution itself, then we'll also get into SASE. It's not just a buzzword, it is a reality, and we need to get a good grasp and understanding of the concept, how it works, how the network is evolving, how the solution fits into place. Then time permitting, of course, we will have a Q&A session. So if you do have any questions during the presentation, I do ask that you kindly utilize the chat feature. I can then revisit those after, and we can go through them. Or alternatively, if you could wait until the end, then we can address any questions accordingly. Okay. Now, one of the key things, and this is something that I actually came across recently on LinkedIn, and I read it and it really resonated with me, and I felt I could actually share that as well with you. One of the things that we've seen when it comes to cybersecurity, and my colleague Riaz has really highlighted on how we need to look at it more from a strategic point of view. And if we really look at it, if we really think that if we change our own approach and think about what we have available to us, that is what will unlock our ability to truly excel in security. So even to the question that was raised earlier, wanting to make sure that we have an understanding and we know what is available to us so that we can unlock the full potential of our existing cybersecurity stack and even broaden our horizons in terms of the offerings that are available to ensure that our environments are as secure as possible. Now, one of the things that we see as a very prominent thing is cybersecurity challenges. It's typically you say cybersecurity challenge and people start thinking phishing. It's beyond just phishing at this point. We've seen so many threats evolving in this instance. We have a recent report that was conducted by Verizon Data Breach Investigations. A report actually showed that 83% of breaches are as a result of external threats. So some of the ways in which these threat actors actually gain access, we're looking at entryways through stolen credentials, for example. We've seen social impersonations. And one of the things that we've seen as implications, as highlighted earlier as well, it's not only financial implications, but also reputational damage. Bouncing back from that and seeing that an organization has been breached and you have customers' data, you've got internal data. There's a whole lot of information that people will now start thinking, okay, do you actually secure my information? And we want to make sure that none of our customers actually fall part of these statistics over here. And a key challenge is not having the required visibility to truly understand what your external digital footprint of the organization actually looks like. And this is where CyberInt comes into play. If you have come across them in the past, or if not, well, this is CyberInt. We actually recently acquired them within the last year. And this has given us an offer, which we now going to go into a little bit more in depth, which actually pioneered the entire external risk management space. They were the first vendor to combine cyber threat intelligence, digital risk protection, and external attack surface management, all into a single comprehensive solution. But I don't want to get ahead of myself, so I'm going to get into a few slides in a little bit that will actually break down the solution into all of its key components. So when we start talking about external risk management, I typically like to ask two questions. It really helps to understand whenever we're engaging with customers and our partners, we want to understand the environment better. And one of the key questions, firstly, is what assets do you need to protect? So this question typically results in a response where we start seeing any type of asset that is typically linked to either an IP address or a domain. And then from there, you start seeing a list such as development environments, applications, social media, customer and employee data. If you're in the financial space, you could also have payment platforms, or in the commercial transactional type of industry, you could have some assets that are sitting within the cloud space. So whether it's in the likes of an Azure, an AWS, GCP, any of those hyperscale providers, you also have suppliers that sit within your organization. So you've got various different providers and various different vendors that you leverage in this instance. Secondly, what risks does the organization face? It's key to understand what are the pain points, right? And once again, we're looking at threat actors and what exactly they're using to get into the organization. How are they attempting to get in? Which door or which window did they see as a vulnerable spot to access the organization? So we see they typically go through ways such as CVE exploits, so your common vulnerability exploits. We've seen supply chain attacks. We've also seen compromised credentials, so the likes of either an executive board member, a director, any member within the organization could have potentially a password 123. I hope no one has that password, but if they have a password 123 and someone actually gains access to that, they can gain access to your corporate network and do so much more from there. From there, we also see fraud, so those financial implications, very big. Another thing on the brand side of things, a brand is truly a company's asset in this instance, and we want to make sure that we can also protect that at the end of the day. And this is where we see the checkpoint solution coming into play. So we want to make sure that none of these risks that you're seeing at the bottom over here get to any of the assets that you have highlighted and mapped out accordingly. So let's get into the core capabilities and how exactly external risk management is typically layered, right? So let's build a little bit of a puzzle here. So at the basis and the foundation of it all, we've got attack surface management. So you want to understand your assets, as I mentioned, typically based off of an IP address or a domain in this instance. You want to know that which assets do I have? So kind of like an inventory in this instance. So attack surface monitoring allows you to continuously add your assets to your environment, and the solution that you ideally have in play needs to be as dynamic and as scalable as your environment. The next part of our puzzle is deep and dark web monitoring. So the deep and dark web is not just an incognito browser tab in a grayscale color mode. There's so much more than that. And within that platform, you often find that there's a high number of cybercrime activity and chatter typically taking place within the dark web, and having visibility into this is a great tool to uncover any of those hidden threats. Next, we've also got brand protection. So as I mentioned, you find people and organizations realize they have websites, they've got social media, all of these types of platforms that are out there. However, cybersecurity strategies in place to protect those may not actually be in place or implemented in this instance, and that's where brand protection comes into play. But I'll get into a little bit more into that in a little bit. The next part is cyber threat intelligence. So we can only benefit from having access to relevant strategic intelligence within the threat landscape. Knowing specifically, let's say if you are based in South Africa, for example, or based anywhere within the African continent, you want to know that the information and the intel that you are able to access is actually relevant and recent to your territory as well. Then the last chunk or the last layer in this instance, we're looking at supply chain intelligence. So as I mentioned, you've got various different providers, various different vendors, and you have to manage all of those, right? So you need to manage what are the risks that are associated to them, and compiling all of that information can sometimes be a bit of a tricky situation. So one of the key things that we really focus on integrating within the external risk management space is the ability to gather the intel on the supply chain, whether it is a checkpoint product or not a checkpoint product. It's a complete agnostic type of approach in this instance. Then more on an active approach, keeping in mind we want to make sure that we're focused on prevention and not detection across the board with all of our solutions. So from a more proactive approach, we also have active exposure validation. So this is one of the latest additions that we have to our ERM offering, which means we now have the ability to actively automate the process of testing an exposure for exploitability in this instance. Now you might be thinking, okay, I'm seeing how all of these pieces are fitting together and what exactly their use cases may be. So external risk management is packaged in such a way that we're offering a complete solution for mitigating those external risks. You don't know what you don't know, right? So having that visibility into the assets and the relevant cyber threats means that we can make sure that we set the correct procedures in place, rather, to make sure that we don't fall part of those 83% of organizations that have been impacted by a data breach from an external threat in this instance. And with that, we're not just giving a platform where you'll just navigate and see what is happening. We offer the support that goes with that as well. So the expert threat intelligence services are available, and you can leverage the checkpoint experts in this instance that can then also help provide relevant insight into digesting that data and understanding what exactly the environment looks like. Okay, so now you might be thinking that's what Checkpoint says, right? Well, we're not just in love with our own external risk management solution in this instance. We've also seen industry analysts such as Gartner, Frost and Sullivan, Forrester and GigaOm have all had a look at our solution, and the feedback that we've received has all been that we are within the enterprise space, a high performer, a leader, and our platform offers some of the best usability and the best results in this instance. So we've seen that with the amount of challenges that organizations face, you've got limited resources, limited visibility, and often scalability is also quite an issue. So from our solution in this instance, we've recognized this and ensured that we're able to offer a solution that can actually meet those needs early on and capitalize on those opportunities. So how the solution is packaged together. So the key and core capabilities that I had touched on earlier. So looking at attack surface monitoring. For that, we look at the various different IP addresses and the domains that would be provided by your IT team. And from there, we then analyze to see what exactly is going on with those IP addresses and those domains. Is there potentially a vulnerability or an exposure detection where we've scoured, the next part of it being the dark web, and we've identified that this IP address was leaked and there's a password or credentials that have actually made its way out. And from there, we can make sure that we implement the right strategies to lock down that account. The global threat intelligence component, as I mentioned, we see cybersecurity threats that move globally. It could have originated somewhere in Europe, and then 2 seconds later, it is somewhere within the African continent. But you also want to make sure that you're able to see relevant to your industry. You could be in the finance industry. And as a matter of fact, you want to see, you know what, I'm based in Zimbabwe, and I would like to see what type of threats have taken place within the Zimbabwean landscape, let's say in the last 5 years. That way, you know, okay, typically they seem to be targeting, let's say, brand impersonations, and then you know what measures you need to put into place. So with that, we have a global threat intelligence feed that is available, that has enriched indicators of compromised feeds that are relevant to various different markets and various different countries. So you're not just looking on a European scale, but rather locally within the African market for recent relevant intel. Next part being the targeted threat intelligence. As I mentioned, you find a lot of the time the content and the activity that is taking place within the dark web. You may not be aware of it. You might find that there's some chatter, and as a matter of fact, some threat actors may actually have had some conversations about targeting a specific organization within a specific time frame. With this, we can then actually bring you that insight and that information to say, hi there, Mr. Customer. As a matter of fact, did you know that on the dark web, they're currently busy highlighting and discussing some components within your organization. And that came as a result of, which is the next step, someone's password was actually leaked. So from there, we can then actually become a whole lot more proactive and take on more of a services type of role. And this extends into any of the modules that you're seeing on the screen right now. So if you have supply chain intelligence, as I mentioned, it's not just looking from a checkpoint perspective. If you've got our firewalls, you could have a third-party solution for any type of offering within your environment. We are able to gather that intel and give you the feedback and say, listen, as a matter of fact, this vendor or this current technology that you're utilizing recently had a CVE or there was a recent breach. According to our systems, this is the score that we give this type of technology from a risk perspective. And then you can see, oh, actually, you know what? This is actually an 8 and this one might be a 2. So what is going on with this one that is rated a 2 in this instance? So from a services perspective, that means you can now also do remediation and takedown services. So if you have seen that there is a fake account, for example, we can then actually facilitate the takedown of that particular account. Now I'm just going to jump across. We're going to move into the next concept, which is SASE. Okay, so SASE is part of our Harmony product range. If you did glance at the screen which Ria shared earlier with the Infinity slide, it sits within our workspace security solution. So SASE was actually a term coined by Gartner. So SASE stands for Secure Access Service Edge. And a lot of the times you may have heard SASE coming up with concepts such as zero trust. These are the foundations of the solution and the offering as a whole, but it is not just zero trust. It is so much more than that. So let's have a look into the rise of SASE and how we've gotten to where we are now. So let's go into the traditional enterprise network. The network used to be simple, right? Users connected from the office to the corporate on-prem data center, but probably using a VPN in this instance. Then we started seeing some internet threats rising, and organizations added maybe a branch office internet security product to ensure that any breakout to the web is actually secure. Then digital transformation hit. We've seen some changes. We've seen some remote work that's come into play, and the adoption and transformation of cloud in this instance and the on-prem VPN. We've seen that there has been some requirements for traffic backhauling, and that has become inefficient and slow, which in turn results in impacting network performance. Then we've also seen, following the pandemic, the adoption of remote and hybrid work, which then further impacted performance. You've now got remote users that need to access all of these resources in a safe and secure fashion, which comes to 3 key things that we've identified: a bad user experience, limited scalability, and a lack of agility. Now, if I had to ask you what component of selecting a SASE solution, or actually a solution in general, what are the key things that our customers have actually noted? So interesting enough, we've actually seen that a top and a key consideration for selecting any solution, specifically SASE in this instance, is purely based on the user experience. There is cost as well and some features that may be required, but a key thing is the end user experience. We want to make sure that we focus on this and we highlight how exactly we've done this. So let's get into how exactly the solution plugs together. So as I mentioned, Gartner coined the term SASE, so Secure Access Service Edge, and the vision for SASE is truly focused on the edge, right? Where any location, whether you have your security services, can actually then best match that use case at hand. So wherever your resources are sitting, as I mentioned, whether they're in the cloud, on-prem, whether it's a SaaS-based application, you're in the office, you're working from home, that connection needs to be secure without impacting your end users in a negative way. So we don't just want to do SASE, right? We want to do hybrid SASE. So this is where our checkpoints offering comes into play. So at its core, we do have the cloud-based option, which is the foundation of it all, but we've taken it a step further. So with the focus being on the end user experience, we now have hybrid SASE. So with this hybrid architecture, we can actually do on-device agent protection. So the agent itself has some intelligence that's actually built into it, which then allows it to perform the full range of security enforcement. And actually, you can then also enable direct connectivity to the destination website without needing to route that traffic through to the cloud. So if we have a look at this diagram over here, you've got your remote users over here. You would then have the agent, so your on-device SASE agent. Whichever actions the user is performing, should it require breakout to the cloud, it will then route the traffic accordingly. Otherwise, the agent itself has the intelligence to actually facilitate the relevant breakout and provide that on-device protection. So network security solutions, we know, can often be a bit of a headache. And one of the things is latency. Users will always say, you've introduced this new product and everything is slow. That is exactly what we don't want. And that's what we're mitigating by having this hybrid SASE approach. So even if you're connecting from a mobile in this instance, or if you have unmanaged users, so the likes of third parties, contractors that come in and may need to manage a certain component within your environment, are then able to have access to only what they need to have access to. So I mentioned zero trust in this instance, and that is the key component and the foundation of our SASE solution. So zero trust is not a single product, but it's rather a framework. It's how we should be thinking and approaching our cybersecurity strategies, as in trust nobody. And until someone has verified that they are who they claim to be, only then and only then do we grant them access to the relevant resources to which they are permitted to gain access to. If you're not supposed to have access to a payroll system, for example, you simply shouldn't see it. And that's where our SASE solution really brings out some key components. So all the way through from connecting through, setting up a network, we've kind of set it up in two different solutions in one. So our SASE solution has private access and the next component being internet access. So whether you're looking at securing the browser, like you see on screen here, the in-browser SASE in this instance, that is more of a component of internet access. So whichever websites you find you need to do URL filtering, which rules certain users should and shouldn't have access to. You can also then set up certain bypass rules and take it a step further by combining it with private access. So when we start going private access, we're looking at setting up various different networks. Certain applications can then sit behind a network. So example of a use case, if you've got a application sitting within the cloud and it should only be accessed through a certain browser at a certain time, during a certain time, and only if the user is on a secure internet connection. That is a perfect use case. We set up a network. In this instance, you have the option of selecting where you would like your network to be configured. At the moment, we have over 81 global places of presence. In the African continent, we currently have one in Johannesburg, with rolling out across the continent and across the globe. So it's easy for you to ensure that from a compliance perspective, your network can reside within a location that is aligned to the local policies. Okay, so one last thing from a unified approach, as my colleague mentioned as well, we have what we call the Infinity offering, and it is AI powered. So AI powered and cloud delivered across the board, across all of our solutions. So our Threat Cloud AI is similar to a human brain, right? You can divide it into two sections. The one side is a little bit more cognitive, and then the other side is the AI component. So the more cognitive side of it has a big data lake essentially of threat intelligence of known and unknown threats, which means it's easy to just go back into the archives and identify this attack was first seen in the year 2003 and it's making a comeback. We know exactly what we need to do to prevent this attack from coming forward. The AI technology component really shines in the aspect of no two environments are the same. And you need to have a solution that learns your environment and then implements and enforces according to that. So that's what our AI component, part of what the AI technology can do. Just a random example, looking for anomalies. If I typically sign in from, let's say, Botswana, 2 minutes later, I'm signing in from France. Cause question mark, how did I get there in 2 minutes? Time travel's not a thing yet. So what is going on? So those are the type of things that it can then look at and flag and then make the relevant decisions from there. So all of that telemetry data is enforced on a global scale. I know I have 2 minutes left, so I just want to have a look if there are any questions. Let me stop sharing.
Yep. Thanks, Cordelia, for that insightful presentation. So there's a question from Sovo. I think it's relating to the SASE. So he says, if you speak about user experience, what does that mean, please?
Sure. So if we have a look from an end user experience, so from a SASE perspective, we're talking about the internet connectivity and the access of routing the traffic, right? So user experience being internet connection, and often at times you often find people say that certain agents are maybe heavy in terms of their consumption. So we're talking processors, storage, all of that. So end user experience being specifically how the breakout happens. So if you are connecting to a resource that is sitting in Ireland, for example, and suddenly your internet connection is dipping, you'd obviously then start wanting to blame the most recent thing that was added to your machine, which could then be some form of a security offering in this instance. So from an end user experience, all the way through from the size of the agent and the impact that it has with routing the traffic, if that makes sense. We can obviously do a bit more of a practical example and a demonstration with a live test of how exactly the end user experience looks and how it is typically impacted in a separate session. Let's see here. Did I miss another question, Mohammed? I see another one in the chat.
Okay, thanks for that. So there's another one from Kaseke asking to say, does Checkpoint have a document that has a list of all the cyber threats and the Checkpoint feature recommended solution that mitigate the threats?
Okay, so from a list of cyber threats. So if you wanted access to that, that's typically more on the intel side of things that you would find from the external risk management solution. So that's when you have access to that large scale data lake of threats that we've identified and the ones that are relevant in this instance. The second component now to the question, which is the Checkpoint recommended solutions. The answer to that one is yes. That is also part of the external risk management offering. So if we have identified a risk in this instance and a potential threat, we don't just tell you about it. We also suggest the remediation, whether it is a patch, whether it is potentially exploring a different solution. So maybe you find you've got web applications and you have nothing securing them. We can then point out, listen, there's a gap here. You may want to look at getting a web application firewall in place, or there's a part of your network that is actually not configured correctly. But we can take that a step further, of course, depending on where exactly the potential threat could be sitting, because there's a wealth of information on the different offerings, and we then do give suggestions and recommendations from there.
Okay. All right. I don't know if there are any further questions, but I saw a lot of people asking if they'll get the slides, which obviously, yes, will be shared. There'll be a follow-up email that will come from Diana, our marketing manager, so she'll send that through to everyone that's attended this session. And then I'll just like to add also, I've seen obviously we've got people that have joined from different areas. So please feel free to reach out if you want to have a session like around the external risk management, the SASE, please reach out and then we'll direct you to the respective people that will be able to assist you on that.
Mohammed, sorry, just one more thing to add in conjunction to that. As Riaz mentioned, we do have POCs available. So if you do want to see the technology live and in action within your environment to a point where you can understand and play around with it a little bit more, we are able to arrange those accordingly, even within the external risk management space. So we can offer more of an assessment in this instance. We map everything with you and your team, and from there we can then build reports accordingly and share feedback based on our findings from there. So we are also able to offer that across the solutions, SASE, any of the ones on the Infinity slide that Riaz did share. But yes, we can share the slides as well.
All right, thanks for that, Cordelia. I don't see any questions.
Mohammed, I have it's Riaz. I have a hard stop now. I need to jump onto another call. So can I leave this in your capable hands, and we will connect with the next steps on those who require assistance in any shape or form.
Yeah, sure, Riaz. That's fine. Thank you for your time. I think we're just winding down.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll manage it in your absence.
Thank you very much. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much to every one of you. Thank you for your time. Please reach out to us. We certainly can help you directly, or we could point you to the right resource locally. If you are in the furthest of East or West Africa, we could definitely get the local representatives to help you there. Thank you so much for your time.
All right. Cheers. Someone's interested in a PLC, Yakubu from Ghana. I'm sure we'll direct you to our point of contact that will be able to assist you there, Yakubu. Maybe you could also share your email address and yeah, we'll reach out to you. Okay. And then there's another question that says, do you have NG labs for simulation practice? Cordelia, is that something you can take?
So sure, no problem, Mohammed. So we do have labs that can be configured in this instance for a good chunk of the solutions in this instance. So you can run through the deployments, the policy configurations, and all of that within a demo environment. Alternatively, if you do have a separate type of environment within your organization where you would want to actively test the solution, we do also have that available. But to the platform specifically, so Eve NG in this instance, I'm going to verify the exact platform in which our labs are deployed, and I can share that information with you as well. I can put that as an action point. I will let you know if it is exactly on that platform.
Okay. All right. I think we're slightly over time, but okay. So there's an email there from Kaseke. All right, we'll be in touch. Yeah. So we'll in the follow-up email where we'll share the contents and I think the recording also will be shared. So we'll have our contacts there. Please feel free to reach out if you want to schedule a presentation on any of the areas that we've looked at, or those that are interested in the POC or want to know more, please do reach out in that follow-up email. So yeah, once again, thank you everyone for your time. We really do appreciate the attendance that we've had, the questions that have come in. We hope you found this insightful. Over to you, Diane, if there's any closing remarks, so we can end this session.
Hi Mo, no, all good. I will be sharing the recording and presentations after the session with a thank you mail. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a great day ahead, and let's be cyber aware. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right.